The hotel smelled of old cigarettes and cheap soap. You know the smell. It gets into your clothes, into your hair, and lingers there like something uninvited. It was the kind of place where people came to disappear for a few hours, tucked behind heavy curtains and sheets that had seen too much. I stood at the front desk with my sunglasses on, even though the light in the lobby was barely enough to see the stains on the wallpaper. The clerk didn't look up at me when I gave my name, fake, of course, and slid a crumpled bill across the counter. He handed me the key to room 206. Brass, scratched, the kind of key you could pocket and no one would care. Room 206. That's where my husband spent his Wednesdays. I didn't know when it started or how long it had been going on. I didn't want to ask him. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing I knew. The only thing that mattered was the fact. He came here every Wednesday with someone who wasn't me. I could picture it in my head. A woman with red lipstick smudged on her glass of wine. A dress with the zipper pulled down halfway. My husband pressing her into the creaking bed, grunting like a man who had rediscovered something he thought he'd lost. I saw all of it, clearer than any movie reel. But I didn't cry when I found the receipts, tucked neatly in his desk drawer. I didn't break plates or scream his name at 2 a.m. Instead, I called the hotel, booked the room next to his, and packed a black silk slip into my overnight bag. Room 206 looked exactly how I thought it would. Beige walls, a single lamp with a cracked shade, and a bed that sagged in the middle. It was all so hopelessly ordinary, which made it worse. It wasn't glamorous or passionate. It was pathetic. This is where he brought her. This is where he left me behind, week after week, and thought I would know. I sat on the bed and kicked off my heels. The air conditioner hummed loudly in the corner, rattling like it was ready to give up. I lit a cigarette even though I don't smoke. Maybe I wanted to understand him. Maybe I wanted to ruin the room a little. Through the thin walls, I could hear voices. Soft at first. A woman's laugh, muffled like it was wrapped in velvet. Then silence. Then the sound of a bed creaking in rhythm. His bed. My chest tightened, but I stayed where I was, smoke curling from between my fingers. I'd prepared for this. I'd told myself this was part of the plan, that hearing it would give me the strength to do what I needed to do. But nothing prepares you for that sound, for hearing the man you've been married to for 8 years fuck someone else 5 feet away from you. I crushed the cigarette into the ashtray and stood up. The walls in this place were like paper. You could hear every breath, every whisper. I pressed my palm against the wall that separated us and waited. Then I started to laugh. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I laughed. Because it was absurd, wasn't it? The whole thing. My husband, a man who wore the same gray socks every day, thought he was clever enough to pull this off. He thought I wouldn't notice him leaving the office, late, every Wednesday. He thought I wouldn't see the cologne on his collar or the way he washed his hands twice when he came home. But I did. I sat back down on the bed and picked up the old hotel phone. The receiver was sticky, and I wiped it with the corner of the sheet before holding it to my ear. I dialed the front desk. The clerk's voice crackled through the line. "Front desk. There's a problem with the room next to mine," I said. My voice was low, calm. I could have been calling about a broken toilet. "Room 205. They're loud." The clerk sighed, like this was something he heard often. "I'll take care of it, ma'am." "Thank you," I said, and hung up. I lit another cigarette and waited. 15 minutes later, I heard a knock through the wall, faint and polite. "Management," a voice said. There was a pause. I imagined my husband freezing mid-movement, glancing at the woman in the bed. Maybe he whispered something to her. "Stay here, I'll handle it." Or maybe he said nothing at all, just slipped on his pants and answered the door like a man whose sins were catching up to him. I heard the clerk's voice, muffled. "We've had a noise complaint. Please keep it down." "Of course," my husband said. His voice. Even through the wall, I knew it. I'd listened to that voice say 1,000 things over the years. "I love you. I'll take care of you. You're the only one for me." Now it was just a voice apologizing to a stranger in a dingy hallway. The door closed again, and the room went quiet. I stayed in room 206 all night. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. I lay on top of the covers in my silk slip, the air conditioning humming in my ears, the cigarette smoke still clinging to the air. I thought about her, the woman in room 205. What did she look like? Was she beautiful? Or was she just available, someone who made him feel like a man again? And what about me? What had I become? I was the woman who sat alone in a hotel room, next to the man who betrayed her and listened to him live a life that didn't include her. I was the woman who watched him undress another woman through a wall she couldn't see through. I was the woman who laughed instead of cried. But not for long. Tomorrow, I'd make him regret it. The next morning, I waited until I heard him leave. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow and heavy, like a man carrying the weight of his sins. I opened the door just as he disappeared around the corner. I stepped into the hallway in my silk slip and bare feet. The carpet was rough against my toes. I turned toward room 205. I knocked. At first, there was no answer. Then, after a long pause, the door creaked open an inch, and she appeared. She looked younger up close, maybe late 20s, with messy hair and smudged mascara. She wore one of my husband's shirts, the same one he'd worn to bed 100 times before. "Yes," she said, her voice groggy. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have walked into the wrong room." From that day, every Wednesday, at the exact time my husband would sneak out to meet his lover, I turned the tables. I began to visit the same motel, room 206 becoming my stage for a 6-month performance of revenge. I invited different men, some from my husband's social circle, colleagues, golf buddies, even the neighbor, who always seemed too friendly. Each encounter was meticulously planned. I wore the same black silk slip, the one that whispered of seduction and secrets. I made sure the room was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of my perfume, a subtle blend that would cling to the sheets, the walls, the very air of the room. Every man was chosen with care. I ensured they were discreet, willing participants in my silent rebellion. The encounters weren't about love or even passion. They were about reclaiming control, about sending a message. I kept a camera hidden in plain sight, capturing each moment. The flash was off, the sound silenced. It was all about the image. I documented every kiss, every touch, every whispered betrayal in the sanctity of room 206. The photographs were my ammunition, my silent cry of defiance. After 6 months, when I felt the weight of my liberation as palpable as the smoke from my cigarettes, I prepared the final act. I compiled all the photos into a thick envelope, each image a testament to my husband's illusion of being the only player in our marriage. I wrote a letter, my handwriting firm and clear. "Dearest John, you thought you were clever, didn't you? Thought you could slip away into the arms of another, week after week, and I would remain none the wiser. But let me enlighten you. You were never the only one who knew how to play this game. Here, in these photos, you'll see the truth of your own making. Each man, each moment, was a mirror to your actions. I've walked your path, but unlike you, I leave with my head high, my heart liberated from your shadow. Goodbye, never contact me again. Sincerely, Florence." With the letter sealed and the envelope heavy with my truth, I left it on his desk one morning before he woke. I didn't wait to see his reaction. I packed my life into suitcases, took one last look at the home we once shared, and walked out. I felt every step lighter, every breath clearer. The motel, the men, the photos, they were my bridge to freedom. I was no longer the woman who waited, who listened, who mourned. I was now the woman who had played and won her own game. And as I drove away, the sun rising over the horizon felt like it was rising just for me.